Are you someone that struggles with self-negative talk? Are you someone that struggles to say no, and in fact you say yes, and then later you end up resentful? Are you never satisfied with the future, where you are in life, who you are, and the people around you? Are you unsure of yourself? Do you have low confidence? Do you struggle to stick up for yourself? Do you struggle to stick to your decisions and who you are as a person? If so, then like me, you once had low self-esteem. And if that is the case, it's not your fault. It's your upbringing, it's your environment, it's a multitude of things, and there is hope. In this video today, we're gonna go through 6 points, 6 ways, there we go, that you can fix your self-esteem. We're gonna go through the 6 pillars of self-esteem and break it down for you bit by bit and give you the solution, give you the key, some practical tips so that you can be a person with more confidence and more self-esteem. Let's get it. So, before we get started, we have to know, what is self-esteem? Is it just confidence? I would say it's more than that. Now, I got these ideas from a book by Nathaniel Branden called The 6 Pillars of Self-Esteem. And he breaks it down into basically 2 factors, 2 points, 2 pillars that make up self-esteem. So you've got self-efficacy and you've got self-respect. Now, when it comes to self-efficacy, that is just basically meaning you are sure of yourself, you're sure of the decisions that you make, of the kind of person you are as you navigate this world. You're not knocked easily by the opinions of others and the influence of others. You're a strong character and you're sure that what you're doing in this world is right for you. Now, self-respect is basically just self-love. Now, the hippies were right when they said it's all about self-love. You have to you have to love yourself. You have to love yourself physically, emotionally, spiritually, in all aspects. And that is going to help keep your self-esteem high. It's going to be, like I said, one of these pillars that's going to strengthen that self-esteem. So the first pillar of self-esteem is living consciously. Now, what that means is basically you live more aware of yourself and the surroundings and others around you. How are you coming across to those around you? How are your actions being perceived by others? A lot of the times we just drift through life unconsciously, go to our 9-to-5 job, we do the standard what needs to be done, and then we go home, watch Netflix, and that's that. Never do we take the time to actually reflect and think, how am I coming across to others? And one of the ways you can basically help mitigate this bad unawareness is by meditating. Now, we obviously bang on about this a lot on RET, but it's literally changing our lives. Tom can attest to that as well. Once you meditate, you're pausing and allowing your mind to reason with the moment. What that means is, instead of just reacting like most people do on this lower vibrational kind of spectrum, they can in fact stop and reason and think about how their actions are coming across. And why is this related to self-esteem? Well, because when you're more conscious, you can catch yourself from just being not conscious, from just reacting, and by doing that you can understand your actions, and then you can actually make the change. Because when you understand your actions, then you can change those actions that are going to help strengthen your self-esteem. And what are the actions that help strengthen your self-esteem, right? Well, we'll get to that later in a bit, but for now we're going to go through the second pillar of self-esteem, which is living with purpose. We are living in a time where so many people are lost. They don't know the high purpose in life, and to be honest, you probably never will. I don't really believe like a purpose exists. You've got to kind of create it rather than trying to find it. So with that, you want to have a purpose in life, because that's going to help with self-esteem. Now again, why is this going to help with self-esteem? When you have a purpose, you are target fixated. You are fixated on your purpose. You're not going to be knocked by the opinions of others, by the influence of others, and people doing whatever they're irrelevantly doing with their lives. And so when you have a purpose, again, this is the second pillar to your self-esteem. So a few more pillars for you to take into account. Now, these ones I've struggled with for quite a while, and the first one is self-acceptance. Basically loving yourself. Like I alluded to at the beginning of the video, you need to just accept yourself for who you are. There's no point comparing yourself to that person or that person, because you're not them. And similar to like what Stoicism says, you focus on what you can control. Remember that dichotomy of control? That's what you do. You focus on what you can control. So you can't control not being 6'2" or being like a handsome model or whatever, or as good looking as me. But what you do control is potentially other factors, like what kind of person you want to be, and so you focus your efforts in that. And by doing that, you're going to raise your self-esteem, because if you just dwell on things that you can't control, how is that going to benefit your self-esteem in any way? You're just going to beat yourself up more. You're just going to have this self-negative talk, and it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. And so self-acceptance is the third pillar of self-esteem. Now the fourth pillar is similar to that, and it's self-responsibility, or take responsibility for your own actions. What that means is basically taking extreme ownership. You know, there's a book by Jocko Williams, is it, Tom?
Yeah.
Extreme ownership. he says as well, like basically a lot of the things, a lot of our issues in life stem from our inability to take responsibility for where we are in life. So what that means is you are responsible for pretty much everything. You are responsible for your misfortunes and your fortunes. And now that can be a hard pill to swallow for some people, but it's the reality of it. And once you do, it's liberating, because once you accept that, you can change it. Like I said, it's liberating. And again, that is the fourth pillar of self-esteem. So by taking responsibility, you can take action in your life, and you're telling yourself, you're telling your psyche, your self-esteem, that this is my life and we're in control of it. Okay, some things are not ideal, but we can change it. Now let's get to work. That is the fourth pillar of self-esteem. Let's get to the fifth and sixth. Right, so the fifth pillar of self-esteem is integrity. Now, integrity for me, and based on a lot of the books that I've read, is like paramount to your own character, and like this video is about your self-esteem. Why is that? So with self-esteem and integrity, the reason this is important is because if you go against your word, if it conflicts, you disrespect your psyche, you disrespect your self-esteem. Your brain is aware of when you lie to yourself, of when you go against your word. And every time you do that, no matter how little the white lies are, you lower your self-esteem, or at least you don't allow yourself to grow. You don't allow your self-esteem to become higher. So integrity is absolutely paramount to keeping your self-esteem up there. What does that mean in a practical sense? That means going with your word, staying strong, staying with your word, no matter what people say. Obviously, don't be arrogant about it. There's a fine line between self-esteem and arrogance. You know, arrogance is believing that you're better than others, which is not what self-esteem is. Self-esteem is internal, believing in yourself, as corny as it sounds, loving yourself. And so getting back to integrity, that's important, because with integrity, like we said,
keep coming, makes the ice cream van.
Fuck. So with integrity, what this looks like in practical sense is, like I was saying, follow through on your word. Stay true to yourself. Don't be swayed by the opinions of others. Integrity means to remain the same regardless of your surroundings or of the situation. So try that. This is not going to come overnight, okay? This is something that is a lifelong process. You don't just get self-esteem overnight. If that was the case, by the time you've watched this, and by the time you've finished watching this video, you're going to have self-esteem. But that is simply, like I said, not going to be the case. So instead, what you want to do is take daily practices of this. And by the end of the video, I'm going to give you some daily practices that you can do. And the last and final point, the last pillar of self-esteem that you need to focus on in order to have bulletproof self-esteem is self-assertiveness. Now, I struggled with this a lot growing up, and I put it down to being an apprentice, to being below the authorities and just never questioning their authoritative power. And when that happens, when you just kind of obey, when you go, yes sir, 3 bags full sir, your self-esteem, you think that's going to do your confidence, your self-esteem any good when you just obey regardless of what you think, and you just listen to your elders because that's the dogmatic belief that we should follow. I disagree, and I think me being an apprentice for 3 years did me no good, and it took me a lot of reflection, a lot of journaling and whatnot, and exercises to kind of realize that, oh shit, I had like a bit of an epiphany moment when I read this book of the 6 pillars of self-esteem. That was a big issue for me, was the assertiveness factor, which was related into the trauma of being an apprentice. And that's no exaggeration when you call it trauma. Trauma isn't something that's like very dramatically traumatic. It's just something that can trigger a PTSD like experience. So whenever you think about something, you will either consciously or unconsciously relate it back to your childhood experience. And for me, it was being an apprentice. Now when it comes to self-assertiveness and me being an apprentice, that laid almost like the blueprint later in life when it came to me doing other jobs, to me even starting my own business and whatnot. You kind of subconsciously lacked the assertiveness to go ahead with your decision, and also when to say no to others and really stick by it, kind of bringing it into integrity. But with assertiveness, it's being able to speak up and speak your mind, and not feel like you're going to be rejected for it, and know that you're going to be okay. So a practical way you can do this is basically learn to say no more. Learn to say no more, even start with the trivial things, like just learning to say no when you don't actually want to go on a walk with someone, learning to say no when you don't want to do overtime in work, learning to say no when you don't want to go to someone's birthday party and you don't want to be rude. You know, just stand your ground, and if that person is a real friend, they'll respect you for it. Because what actually happens with this kind of goes into people pleasers, but paradoxically, the more you say no, the more people actually respect you, because they respect your time and they respect that when you do say yes, by contrast, it's a rarity because you don't always say yes, so they really appreciate that more. So I hope that helps with self-assertiveness. Learn to say no more, learn to just stand up for yourself and assert yourself, whether that's going for that job interview, whether that's asking that girl out, whether that's saying something that's on your mind because you don't want to end up resentful later when you store it into the shadow, as Carl Jung said. So these are the 6 pillars of self-esteem, and now collectively, if you take away from this video and you remember these 6 pillars and you just write them down, man. Like, I wrote them down on my hand for like a month, and I also journaled about it and whatnot, and this shit works. Like, it does help with being more mindful, being more conscious, living with a bit more purpose. Remind yourself of your purpose, where you're going, kind of let everyone's opinions and influence like bounce off you, and ultimately, like, it's like I said, it's a lifelong process with this self-esteem thing. You're never going to get it overnight. You know, I'm not going to get it overnight. No one has. Like, self-esteem is almost like kind of limitless with the ceiling of it, and not so much limitless as well. It's also, you have to keep it up. If you let someone kind of affect your self-esteem, fight for it. You know, be assertive, like I said. Don't let them push you around. Be assertive, have integrity, live with purpose, etc. And you'll have good self-esteem. So I hope that helped you guys. This has been the 6 pillars of self-esteem. If you're interested more, you can get the book by Nathaniel Branden, The 6 Pillars of Self-Esteem. Would highly, highly recommend. And I will see you in the next video.